The Saturday Morning Snap is a one-stop fantasy shop, bringing weekly news and advice in under an hour. I'm Mackenzie Tout, joined by Landon Monula. Welcome to the podcast. We are back. Live on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, or however you may be listening. We want to welcome you into the show. It is episode number 25 of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Saturday, October 20th, and I'm here with my good man, Landon. How are you doing this morning, my friend?
I am doing excellent, and this is why exactly that we release on Saturday morning.
You're damn right.
We're the first ones to talk about the big trade. We can recap the Thursday night. And it's a great Saturday morning for me. How about yourself?
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's almost a blessing in disguise on weeks like this where you get to kind of wait and see how all of the injuries are trending. And this week, a big trade happened, which causes a lot of fantasy implications. So I'm excited to talk about it. And, I really just want to, without further ado, get into this thing. But what do you got going on the rest of your day here after we're done?
My sister and her boyfriend are in town, so we're gonna go for brunch once we're done. We're gonna go hit some climbing. We're gonna go to the climbing wall in Guelph, and then I've got work tonight.
Oh, slinging that past, eh?
Yeah, we actually had a nice dinner at my work last night. It was nice. Really good. They took care of us really well. And I got to try some more of the food. So, yeah, man, everything's good in the hood.
We went out for my dad's birthday last night. Big old 57th birthday. And we went out to Lone Star Grill, one of my dad's favorite places. And we put our order in. We all got fajitas. And, we're just sitting there. I had a couple bevies. And we're just waiting. An hour goes by, no food shows up. And my dad, just kind of jokingly to the waiter, he's like, "Did you put our food in?" And the guy's like, yeah, for sure. I'm actually wondering where it is. Goes back and comes back out. He's like, so long story short, we got a pretty good discount on the bill.
Oh, and, no, but still, that's brutal.
Yeah, it's, it is what it is.
So did he forgot then?
He said he put it through, but it was like some glitch in the system. The steak that my sister's husband ordered got through to the kitchen, but the rest of the food didn't. I don't know. It was weird, but they were great about it. They gave us a nice little discount, and at the end of the day, everyone was happy. So it's not too bad.
Right on, my man. So where do you want to start? You want the biggest news of the season right now, probably trade wise. Well, mid-season.
I do want to start by telling everybody that we are on Instagram at Saturday Morning Snap, and they can find us on Twitter as well. I'm at Mac_SMS, and you are predictably at
Landon_SMS.
Wow, how creative! Yeah, you know what? There's tons of news and notes happening this week in the NFL. And like we said, most of it happened yesterday. So I'm glad that we do Saturday mornings, which is sweet. Biggest headline of the week, the Browns, I guess former Browns, running back Carlos Hyde has been traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars as per ESPN's Adam Schefter. So just before I pass this off to you for your thoughts, Carlos Hyde not expected to play in week 7. So if you have Carlos Hyde, he's probably no longer starting for you. And that kind of sucks. Yeah, that kind of sucks. So my question to you as I pass this off is, what does this tell us about Leonard Fournette's health and the involvement of TJ Yeldon?
This is bad news all the way around for Yeldon and for Fournette. We talked about this a little bit as soon as it happened. This just doesn't project well for Fournette and his health. There's no reason why the Jaguars would have actually traded for a guy like Carlos if they suspected that Fournette would be back in the next, well, when the news broke, we expected 2 to 3 weeks, and now that's 2 weeks away. So, and the thing is that Yeldon hasn't been playing that bad, but the Jags have not been winning. Their defense hasn't really performed the way we expected.
No.
And yeah, I think is it just like a knee jerk reaction to how their team's been performing? Why would they do such a thing if it wasn't for maybe a long term concern for Fournette?
Yeah, I don't know. The reports that I've read is that the expected return for Leonard Fournette will be after their bye week in week 9. So do they actually just feel like with Corey Grant going down that they needed somebody else? I feel like it was too big of a move for the Jags to make if Leonard Fournette was actually going to return in 2 weeks. I don't know if this is kind of like overreacting or what the case may be, but I don't really buy into the fact that Leonard Fournette is fully healthy and will be returning in week 9. That's kind of where because I'm with you, it doesn't add up. The stories don't match. And so TJ Yeldon was taken off the injury report. So he looks to be healthy. And, this week, again, I think he's very safe because Carlos Hyde's not going to play. But, moving forward, is it going to be Leonard Fournette, Carlos Hyde, and TJ Yeldon? Like, how do you see the three of them sharing the ball?
That's an absolute mess afterwards. Like, what do you do? Man. Because TJ Yeldon's been a steady start. He's had really good games for you. Maybe not last week, but previous weeks he has.
Oh, he won me my week the week before.
Exactly. So with Carlos coming in, it's now TJ Yeldon is pretty much he's not playable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if Carlos, but at the same time, are they both going to get? Is either one going to get the lion's share of the work? I also don't really think so. Are they both not playable? Because originally people were like, all right, well now Carlos has a better offensive line. Mm-hmm. He should be able to score pretty good. It's not the Cleveland Browns. There's still a stigma around the Browns.
Sure.
So they're he's now on a playoff team, so he should go up. But it could be a shared workload. That might just be scary for everyone. So if you own then any three of these guys, do you try to? I mean, you're not going to get anything for Fournette right now, right. But do you try to trade Carlos Hyde? I suppose that's my question.
You know how I feel about Carlos Hyde. I love Carlos Hyde, but if I own him, which I fortunately traded him a couple weeks ago,
yep.
My first reaction to this whole trade was, oh man, Carlos Hyde, this is such an upgrade for him. I'm so excited to have him. And I think after analyzing it and thinking about maybe long term, that I might want to sell Carlos Hyde on this hype, on this good news that he's moving to a better team and a better offense, because I think in a couple weeks with a return of Fournette that Carlos Hyde might not be have running back 1 upside. He might be a fringe running back 2 or 3. So I think right now I'm going to be selling Carlos Hyde if I can.
I think you're right.
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I just think if Fournette actually does come back, he's going to get the lion's share of the work. TJ Yeldon is going to be used almost like Duke Johnson's being used in Cleveland right now. But speaking about Cleveland, because we've only talked about the Jaguar side of the ball.
Correct.
How does this affect...
That's all that matters.
Yeah, well, true. How does that affect the Cleveland backfield? Because you've got now a huge opportunity for Nick Chubb, and Duke Johnson should see a lot more work than he has seen because now he's not competing with 3 guys. It's only 2. So are you trying to get yourself some Nick Chubb shares here? Like how do you see this whole thing shaking out?
I tried to get myself some Nick Chubb shares, but he was surprisingly, I don't know how he's owned in all 4 of my leagues. It's ridiculous. Like, why are you stashing Nick Chubb? I wouldn't have been stashing Nick Chubb. I get he was drafted at the beginning of the second round, but I didn't project. Obviously, no one really expected this trade to happen, and he really broke out in a couple runs in particular, and people liked his flash, and obviously the Browns saw all that they needed to see. you can't trade for Nick Chubb right now because people are going to try to sell him far too high. I think this is more of a Duke Johnson opportunity to get his role back that he had last year. That PPR guy, he's probably going to be maybe second and third down. They're going to mix in that second round work. I think Nick Chubb's probably going to get first round or first down work, and but it'll be a slow progression for Nick Chubb. He still needs to be able to pass protect. He's still going to need to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. But people are expecting. I mean, the hypers, the dynasty guys are expecting. Oh, he's now a wide receiver 1-2 guy. And, well, that's not necessarily. I don't think that's accurate. I think he's more of a fringe guy. He's flexible in some leagues if you have to, but I'm a wait and see for him and see how he does with this Cleveland offense. But I don't mind Duke Johnson. I think we're going to talk about him a little bit later.
Cool.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this backfield? Did you get a chance to own any of these players, and who would you rather own? Obviously, we're not talking dynasty. Obviously, Nick Chubb is a great dynasty ad right now, but in seasonal leagues, who do you think is going to have a better season, rest of season?
Between Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson?
Yeah.
I'd probably say Duke Johnson if I had to choose. I mean, the default for most leagues is half-point PPR. So if Duke Johnson gets that level of involvement he did last week, moving forward, I really like his chances to outperform Nick Chubb. It'll be interesting to see how Chubb handles a full workload. So I don't know if I'd be overreacting to the news of getting Nick Chubb. I might stash him if I can, but I've already checked a lot of waivers and he's not available. So, people have either been stashing, holding out, or maybe even not seeing it coming where Carlos Hyde gets traded, but maybe if he was unable to perform, I don't know. So for whatever reason, he's not available in a lot of my leagues. Oakland running back Marshawn Lynch will be out for at least a month with a groin injury. MRIs came back positive, not looking good for him. And so for Oakland, the struggles continue. Is it time to get yourself some Jalen Richard? Or if you don't want to go that route, are you flipping over to Doug Martin?
Yeah, Dougie. I was a big believer that once Doug Martin came back last year from suspension, he would be fantasy relevant in Tampa Bay, and that was not. I got bit by that bug, and I do not want to be bit again. It feels gross to add Doug Martin, but I've seen him added in a couple deep leagues, but I would prefer Jalen Richard. They're on bye this week, so. This is again a pro tip. If you go to next week, scroll to your next week, and if you have a guy on bye, a running back in particular, add one of these two players if you see them sitting on your waiver wire, and then you don't have to worry about battling the waivers next week,
right?
Because they will be highly added, and that's the best news when. Unless you're in a league where like waivers go through every night, which I think we should almost do that, Mackenzie. I think that'd be interesting.
It makes it more competitive.
So that just the guys that don't, all the guys with the sleeper app are trying to fight for the free agent at the same time. Instead, everyone gets a free opportunity at a guy like Chubb or Richard when a big news like this comes out. So
here's a pro tip. In our league and in most leagues, the default is waivers go through Wednesday morning and Saturday morning, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. If you are trying to pick up a guy who is a free agent and it wasn't somebody who was dropped onto waivers, you can scoop them before waivers go through because there is no processing time on a free agent.
Yeah.
Right? So, I added a couple guys the other night on like a Thursday night, and I got them immediately. So because they were free agents. So if you see FA beside their name, go ahead and pick them up right away. You don't have to put a claim in and wait till Saturday.
I remember 4 or 5 years ago when I was just kind of getting into it, and I was like, it was Saturday, and my guy went down, and I'm like, what? Why can't I add, why doesn't he show up on my team right away?
Yeah.
I didn't realize the W beside his name and he was dropped and he's on waivers.
Right.
And the free agent is that he's gonna show up on your team right away. So I mean, for most people listening, that's yeah, no shit, buddy. But at the same time, it might take, you never know. If you're not used to playing and you don't understand the waiver free agent priority system, then yeah, there you go. Now you know.
Is there anybody on Oakland that you would consider rostering going forward or even starting this week? I mean, Amari Cooper's been terrible. Martavis Bryant has been unpredictable. And Derek Carr, he's had his weeks, but not a guy I would play every single week. So is there anybody that you would long-term see some value in and some worth? Or like a guy like Amari Cooper, can you just drop him?
That's a great question. So last year, Amari Cooper was really bad. His
He had
catch
one good
percentage, correct? Yeah, one blow up game, but his catch percentage, I mean, was bad.
Yeah.
He wasn't making the most of his targets. He had, like you said, he had one game, but most of the time he just lost you your league if you owned him.
Yeah.
This year he's been letting you down, but he actually hasn't really been getting the targets.
Right.
So he's doing enough with his targets. His catch percentage is good. He's just not really doing much. So with that said, I don't know if they're going to change anything. As a rule, I mean, this John Gruden offense, I don't have any shares of anyone on it, and I like to keep it that way.
Right.
But, I mean, Amari Cooper is still only 24 years old. He's got a bad rap. If you can't sell him in any dynasty league, but you can sure buy him. So,
you can buy him for pennies, guy.
In dynasty in particular, I wouldn't mind. People are definitely willing to trade Amari Cooper. They don't care anymore. They'll give you him for a bag of donuts. But I think he's a sneaky buy in dynasty if you can.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, especially this year. But I think it's possible that the Raiders turn it around and actually feature him a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to predict when that's going to happen. You don't feel comfortable starting him. He might lose you a couple more matchups, and then you might just tilt and drop him. But see, if he was on the waiver wire, I would pick him up. Why wouldn't you? That's really the question I have. If you would drop a guy like that, if he's sitting on the waiver wire, I'd put some fab on him.
If you're looking to get Amari Cooper, he's been placed into the concussion protocol, and it's unclear if he'll be cleared for this coming week. So that's just a little. Or no, sorry, not for this week. He's on bye this week, but for week 8, he is unsure that he'll be cleared for that. So here's just one thing to note with Amari Cooper. I am with you that he is droppable because he's been so bad. Look at the defenses they've played so far this year. The Raiders, the Rams, the Broncos, the Dolphins, not great. The Browns, good defense, the Chargers, and then the Seahawks. So, it's not like they've been playing a fairly easy defenses, but on the flip side, the games where he struggled, 3 targets, 5 targets, 1 target, 1 target. Seeing out of a guy you spent 2nd, 3rd round draft capital on to see 1 for 9, 2 for 17, 1 for 10, that's really got to, grind your gears. I mean, it's nice to see on the games he's been doing well, 10 for 116, 8 for 128 and 1. Those are big games, but at this point, he is literally the definition of boom or bust.
Yeah, and though that 10 for 10 game, I mean, he's catching everything. So he's not himself doing that bad. It's just that offense. So if you don't trust Derek Carr, which we talked about a few weeks ago, I think there's a time. I think it's a hold. Still, do not drop Amari Cooper. I think there's time. They've got Indy, San Francisco, Chargers, Arizona in the next 4 weeks after the bye. So there's definitely opportunity for Amari to. It'll be tempting to start him anyways. I'll give you that.
Would you make a trade for like a guy like Geronimo Allison with Amari Cooper?
I would probably prefer Amari.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Just with Geronimo, I mean, early on he flashed. He's been in concussion protocol, right? Is that his injury?
Yes.
Oh, hamstring. He's hamstring, a couple hamstrings.
He's a bunch of
that.
stuff.
Yeah, so there's too many injuries for me on Geronimo. I mean, he's on a much better offense, and he had really good 15 fantasy points, 11, 14, 11. He was really good when he was playing. Just the past 2 weeks, he's put up big old donuts.
Mm-hmm. Well, he hasn't played.
Yeah, exactly. So he should be back. They play the Rams after the bye. New England, Miami, Seattle.
Yeah,
they've got decent matchups, and if he gets right, just man, hamstring injuries have killed players this year.
Soft tissue issues, baby.
Yeah. So
the Cardinals are moving on from OC Mike McCoy. It's about damn time. It's some people have said he's been fired. The official report is he was relieved of his duties. A nice way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah. Notable stepping up is Byron Leftwich. He's taking over the offense and the play calling. Leftwich was a part of Bruce Arians' system when he was there, and so he has seen a system in where DJ has been, David Johnson has been healthy and successful. If you're a DJ owner, does it give you any hope? And if so, if you're not a DJ owner, are you going to buy him from anybody?
That's an interesting situation because as a DJ owner and you see the firing, you're hopeful that it's going to turn around.
It can't get any worse, as far as I'm concerned.
That's what we thought when Sam Bradford left.
Yeah.
And then it stayed worse. It stayed bad. And you're right. I think with Leftwich, I still think of Leftwich as the Jaguars quarterback back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't think of him. Is that the same guy? Am I going nuts?
I'd have to check on that.
Byron Leftwich. I want to say he was. Oh yeah, he used to be quarterback for the. Or was the coordinator for the Cardinals? Drafted by the Jaguars. Yeah, oh yeah, he was the quarterback for the Jags way back when. Whew. And anyways, I don't know what depends on the price for. I've actually sent. It's funny you mentioned that. I've sent off some feelers for DJ. He's in our league. He's going to be a second round pick next year, with the keeper league. So he might be going in the second round. So if you go and trade a pick for him or something, you might not be getting that much value.
Right.
And this year, is he really going to turn it around? Is that offensive line just magically going to block with Byron Leftwich at the helm? No. Is Josh Rosen going to stop throwing picks? Well, probably not. Maybe.
Yeah.
That was a bad game for Josh Rosen, and it's been that was a susceptible Denver defense, and obviously they showed out this game, and Von Miller came to play.
Well, we're going to talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So.
Moving on from news and notes, we're not going to cover the Lions game this week, but Theo Riddick has an injury, so start your carry-on Johnsons with absolute confidence. If you weren't already, he should have a ton of work ahead of him.
Yeah, for sure.
Weekly matchups.
Looking towards the weekly matchups here, we're going to note that the Packers, Steelers, Seahawks, and Raiders are on bye, so you might not want to play any of those players. You'll get, I can comfortably predict you'll get 0 points from any of those guys like Devontae Adams or Antonio Brown. You'll get 0. So
they might look better than your replacement starter, but
maybe
that's about it.
Recapping the Thursday night game, we had Denver taking on Arizona, and the Broncos came out and steamrolled the Cardinals 45-10.
So I only caught the fourth quarter, so I want to hear your kind of recap of this game. I know the highlights, I know kind of what happened fantasy-wise, but
yeah,
well, your Cole's notes on this game.
Yeah, I had flipped this game on midway through the first quarter, and it was 7-0. And I said to myself, okay, who scored the touchdown, because I had Demaryius Thomas starting in Dynasty. Case Keenum was on my bench, thankfully. And so I'm looking through the box score and I see no offensive touchdowns. So I scroll back to the play-by-play and it's, a pick six. And I'm like, sweet. Guess who I'm starting? Denver D. Not
Against who?
you.
You know how much tilted you would be if I had Denver D?
I would stop. I would stop playing fantasy football. I would stop podcasting. I'd be done.
You'd be so mad. You'd be so mad.
I'm going to talk about that in a second. So, not literally one possession later, pick six again. 2 pick sixes in the first quarter. And I'm looking down to Denver defense, 18 points. Like, this is amazing. What a good start to the week. It gets better. They had 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 3 forced fumbles, 2 recovered fumbles, 6 sacks. They were just unbelievable. They ended up giving me 32 points. And I put out a tweet to one of our league mates, Aaron, and I said, Aaron, thank you so much for outbidding me on the Colts this week by, I think, $2 and forcing me to pick up Denver. I know that Landon really, really appreciates it. And so at this point, Landon, I just have to say, suck it, because I really need a win.
I need to win that league too. But
well, you ain't getting it this week.
What? I feel for you. It's tough if you're playing against Denver D. It's kind of the week's lost before it already happened.
Yeah.
Oh man, if I somehow managed to beat you in that league, I am gonna be so happy. You're gonna be fuming on Wednesday's show.
I will not. I will be calling in sick.
But I don't take it that seriously. You're all good. Go ahead and take your win. Keep on trade raping and do whatever you got to do.
Wow. Notable performances from this game. Emmanuel Sanders had a huge game, 6 for 102 and a touchdown, plus a passing touchdown. He's joining the likes of Odell Beckham Jr. on running the trick plays. Philip Lindsay also looked great. He was 14 for 90 and a touchdown. And if you compare that to his counterpart, Royce Freeman, who was 13 for 37 and a touchdown, he was a lot more efficient. And really, Royce Freeman's touchdown was sort of vultured. It came after a pass interference play that put them on the 1, and Royce Freeman barely broke the plane. It wasn't a convincing run. It was more of a vulture play. Had he been stopped, I guarantee you that Philip Lindsay gets a look at the end zone, and then they maybe go for Sanders, Jake Butt, or Demaryius Thomas. So really, if you compare them, 14 to 13 touches, Philip Lindsay did a lot with his touches, whereas Royce Freeman at times did not. He had a couple runs for 8 or 9 yards that looked fairly decent, but at times he looked slow, wasn't able to break a couple tackles, and got stopped behind the line. So just watching the game, it was a Philip Lindsay domination, and Royce Freeman was not as good as his fantasy output entails, because he had 9.8 points, somewhere close to 10.5 point leagues. So nothing great. You also might have heard news that Emmanuel Sanders tweaked his ankle at the end of the fourth quarter. For the record, Sanders came out and said that he would have returned if this was a more competitive game. So I don't have any reservations on Emmanuel Sanders. I think he's quite fine. He said that he would have been fine to come back in. And that's really all I think I need to say about this game. It was...
Yep.
The Cardinals, there's not much to speak on. They were terrible. And I think until you see changes in maybe that offensive system, there's no real point in starting anybody but David Johnson. And even that isn't great.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are going to flash ahead to the Titans and the Chargers. Now, both of these teams are on the road this week at Wembley Stadium in London. And so, unlike last week's game with a 1:30 Eastern, a 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time start, this week it's going to be a 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time start. So if you have any Titans or Chargers in your lineup, probably more Chargers than Titans, you need to go ahead and set them tonight. Saturday night because when you wake up, they might already be playing, and if they're on your bench, tough luck. So make
There's
sure,
no
for
need-
whatever reason, Melvin Gordon, Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers are in your lineups.
There's no need to wake up at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. Let's be honest. Sleep in on Sunday morning. Wake up 10 o'clock. Turn on the
Listen,
game.
some people
and
have
you're gonna be
lives,
happy.
Landon. Some people don't
No,
sling
no.
pasta for a living till all hours of the night.
Yeah. So how do you see this? Obviously, the Chargers are 6.5-point favorites.
Yes.
As they probably should be. But the Titans defense has, as in general context, played pretty well. Do you how do you see this game panning out? Now, historically, these Wembley games, these overseas games, are blowouts. Is this a blowout candidate, or is this going to be closer than we expect?
I like the Chargers to have a day. I really want to see Keenan Allen get going because he's been a little bit slow lately, and I think that's been partly due to the fact that Melvin Gordon has just been flexing on other teams and
fully flexing.
Yeah, he's showing off the muscles. I think Melvin Gordon will be every bit as good as he's been the last couple weeks, but there might be a situation where they just give Phillip Rivers the green light and he can just let it fly. Tennessee.
Problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
The problem with Keenan Allen having a big game is that they might just get off to that lead early, and if it happens to be Melvin vulturing those touchdowns early, then it just won't be much of a passing game. It's just going to be probably Eckler mixed in. There's going to be Melvin Gordon, and they'll still throw it here and there, but it's.
Did you say Mixon?
Sorry, I meant to say Melvin.
Okay.
Who knows? I hope it's a blowout. I hope it's just a Chargers gong show and they put up 42 points by themselves. And but it's better for fantasy, like we talked about last week, is if the Titans manage to keep it close, the Chargers give up a bunch of points. Maybe it's kick return yards, or it's a pick six, or it's something like that, where the score is close, and then the Chargers keep having to throw the ball, like you said. Rivers just lets it loose, and the Titans just can't keep up. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, and if I own any Chargers, I'm starting them with confidence. I would even consider playing Austin Eckler for the reasons that you stated, where the game script could totally be a blowout and they're going to just kind of sit Melvin Gordon down after 2 or 3 touchdowns and just say, okay, Austin, go have your fun, do your thing. Yep. He could be serviceable as like a flex play. So I'm okay with Eckler. On the Titans side of the ball, I'm not starting. I'm not starting pretty much anybody. I mean,
even Corey Davis, you're not thrilled about starting.
What we had talked about earlier before we started podcasting, I think I'm with you in that I would start other options if I had them.
Do you think is Tennessee ever going to get their running game figured out? Now I get you've been a Derrick Henry hater, but say as just a whole, like even between if you could start both those guys, Lewis and Henry, in one starting spot, are they gonna put together a game eventually, or is it just gonna they have to, can't they?
Hater is a big word, Landon. Didn't Kelly ever teach you not to use the word hate?
Well,
I would rather say that I loathe Derrick Henry.
It's worse.
Derrick Henry is on like 2 or 3 of my waiver wires. And I have no desire to pick him up or even contemplate it. He's been so bad. Dion Lewis would be the only guy that I would consider playing in that backfield. Marcus Mariota was awful last week, so I don't know, man. I'm really not excited for anybody on this team at the moment. I know the Titans are 3-3. I don't know how. The Chargers should come out and smack them. I think 6.5 points is generous, and if I was a betting man, I'd be taking that line for sure.
Cool.
Let's move on to a more competitive game. Hopefully, we've got the 4-2 Patriots visiting the 3-2 Chicago Bears. Chicago coming off a bye week. Patriots are 2.5 point favorites in a 48.5 point over under. Who do you like in this game?
I think I still like the Patriots. I don't have confidence in the Bears offense. Mitch Trubisky showing out is a mirage to me.
Ooh.
But saying
Shots
that,
fired.
saying that the Patriots defense is susceptible. They seem to lock down the number one option, which seems to be Allen Robinson. So he gets a little bit of a downgrade in my rankings. But that leaves an opening for Burton and Gabriel to really show out for pass catchers. And I think it's a game script that Cohen could get a lot of work. Despite that, the Bears have a good defense. I think the Patriots can still score. Cohen should be good. I'm holding out hope for Jordan Howard. I am,
As you should.
Officially this morning, I'm sitting him over Mark Ingram and Kerryon Johnson.
Good call.
So it's a tough one because the Patriots defense does give up points to the running back, and I expect my bold prediction for Howard's probably 14 for 74 and hopefully gets in the end zone. So that's not necessarily a bad game, but I'm looking for the upside, and I think it's possible that Ingram gets another 2 touchdowns. That offense, I know that Baltimore is very good. We're talking about that game next, so I'll wait to go there. But it's tough. The Bears backfield is heartbreaking for me.
Yeah. Is this a bounce back time for Gronk?
Like we talked about Gronk last week, and I do actually think so. I don't know. I think they're going to get him more involved. They'll see what happened at the end of the last game or in the last quarter of using Gronk. I heard this thing this past week that Gronk just doesn't seem as excited to play the game. He used to fist pump and yell every time he got a first down, and he's not doing that this year. I think that's a bunch of BS. I think he still has love for the game. It's just...
Would you be excited if you only got targeted 2 times in 56 minutes?
No, exactly.
Exactly.
So I hope to see... I think this is a bounce-back game. I think Gronk is going to overcome your 32-point Denver defense to start.
Yeah, maybe. I look to this game where I would start a lot of players. Michelle, White, Gordon, Edelman, Brady for sure. I would stay off of Chris Hogan. Maybe if you're really desperate in a deeper league, he could be a flex play. I like Tariq Cohen. Jordan Howard's okay. I think I'm with you. He'll be all right, but not the upside play that you might need to win a matchup where you're down 32 points to Denver defense.
Yep.
I really, really like Taylor Gabriel. He's been great so far this year, surpassing Allen Robinson for targets and performance. So, even Trey Burton, I would start. So I think this is a really good fantasy relevant game and has a lot of opportunity for guys to shine. You could even go as far as Mitch Trubisky, although I know you called him out a little bit. He's been good at times this year. I mean, you look back to the 6 touchdown game. Yeah, it might be a mirage. They don't happen too often, but the only other quarterback this year to throw for 6 in a game was Patrick Mahomes. So,
and Trey Burton, I mean, you probably have to start him, but if you don't, I think looking at his targets and his touchdowns, they're not very sustainable. It's tough. If you could manage to flip Trey Burton, I think that might be more of a better option. And if you have a guy like Vance McDonald instead, or even Austin Hooper's been at least getting the targets instead of Trey Burton. So he's only 4 times last week, 4 times the week before against Tampa Bay, 5, 4, 6, and when he got 6 targets, he only had 1 reception. So I know it's we've talked at length about the tight end landscape, and it's tough. You might have to play him if you have him, but I don't love Trey Burton as a. I think he's also a mirage of fantasy points for the tight end position.
The only thing that my rebuttal will be for Trey Burton is that I like how he's involved in the red zone, especially around the goal line. They have that little sort of read option play for Trubisky to give the handoff to Burton instead of Howard or Cohen, and they've scored on
2
that
touchdowns
twice.
that.
He scored twice on that, right? So, that's something where it's nice to see him involved around the goal line. So if he's irrelevant the whole game for receptions and yardage, but he gets that little, 2-yard handoff for a touchdown, there's your 6 points you're looking for the week out of a tight end.
Yeah.
So
I know.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you, but at the same time,
It might be too late now, really.
yeah,
but
exactly. Let's move on to the Saints visiting the Ravens. The Saints are 4-1. The Ravens are 4-2. This should be a fairly competitive game. We've got the Ravens as 2.5-point favorites in an over/under game of 49. So, do you agree with the Ravens being favorites? Do you agree with Vegas on this one?
Well, fun fact is that the Saints have never beat the Ravens.
Like ever, or at home, or like what's the stat here?
Like ever. Now, I don't think this is a Drew Brees stat. I think it's just the Saints can never seem to beat the Ravens. And I was listening to the Fantasy or NFL Network on Sirius Radio, and they were talking, well, everyone has their Achilles heel. Like the Patriots always have a tough time against the Dolphins, and the Steelers have a tough time against the Ravens. And it's like, well, people forget about, I guess, this Achilles heel when it comes to matchups. But I still think the Saints have a better team. I think their defense is better than what the stats are showing as well. I think they're going to kind of come back, and it's tough because the Ravens offense has really stepped up. Joe Flacco's been airing it out. He's got the best weapons he's had in a long time. 49-point over/under. I would love to see the Saints keep struggling on defense and the over go here. As for the winner, and that Ravens defense is pretty stout, and they just got their Pro Bowl cornerback, right? Jimmy Smith should be back this week. So
yeah,
but
you know what? I look at this game as the Ravens. The Ravens have a good defense. I'm not even looking at the defensive side of the ball because I know the Saints aren't great statistically. They've got some time to hopefully figure that out before playoffs. But if I'm just comparing offensive output and capability for the two teams, the Saints win by a mile. It's not even close, right? When you see,
but the defense is a great equalizer where the Saints defense is struggling and the Ravens offense is still pretty good.
Maybe,
but you still like the Saints here, right?
Yeah. When you look at the other side of the ball, Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, like what do you do? Do you try to stop the run and force them to pass? If you force them to pass, it's Drew Brees, man. You like, don't feed into what he's best at, right? Yeah. I don't know. What's the game plan for the Baltimore Ravens? Because, I know their defense is good, but come on.
Well, I mean, they're going to run the ball with Alex Collins, and they've got Brown that stretches the field, and Crabtree had kind of a coming out show last week. So,
yeah,
man, it's good. It's going to be a fun game to watch. I'm looking forward to this game at all. It's a tough, and this is what we want. It's only a 2.5-point spread, so it should be very competitive.
The Saints are an unbelievable offense. I would even go as far as to say probably the best in the league, other than the Chiefs. So yeah, I think they're going to have their hands full, and we're really going to see how good the Ravens defense is this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of weeks ago we talked about when we were recording during the
game,
Thursday night the game.
No, Monday night game.
Oh, it was a Monday night game. So Ted Ginn is still out, and he actually was moved to IR. So between Cam Meredith, short yardage passing, our reception guy, he's going to get lots of targets, or you have the rookie high flyer Traquan Smith. Who do you like between the two, and would you start either one against maybe a pretty tough matchup where maybe the tertiary guys might not be as relevant?
I prefer the Traquan Smith role because when you look at Traquan Smith versus Cam Meredith already had his place in the offense, right? He's been there the whole year. But Traquan Smith is now coming in to replace Ted Ginn's role. So he's going to be the guy flying down the field.
He was drafted to be the Ted Ginn replacement, right?
Absolutely. And we know that he's fast. If you look back to the last game that the Saints played where Drew Brees broke the record, who was that 50-yard bomb to? Traquan Smith. Did Traquan Smith not have 2 big touchdowns in that game for long plays?
Absolutely. He had a great game.
So he's shown that he can make big plays, and all you need is one of them to sort of give yourself the points that you need at that position. I mean, it's a wide receiver 3 play as far as I'm concerned. So I would be flexing Traquan Smith if I could get my hands on him. I did in a couple leagues. He's worthy of a flex play. If you play in a deeper 3 wide receiver set league, I would put him in as my wide receiver 3 for sure. I think the matchup is quite fine. I actually don't think the Ravens defense is that good. Not good enough to stop a team like the Chiefs or the Saints when they're fully healthy and chugging along. So yeah, man, I really like Traquan Smith. That's not to discount Cam Meredith, but I just think that Traquan Smith is going to be the better play. He's going to give you the higher ceiling.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
So
last game, big game preview.
Yeah, moving on.
Highest over-under of the week at 58. We've got the 4-2 Bengals visiting the 5-1 Chiefs. That leaves now, after their loss, the Rams as the only undefeated team at 6-0. Chiefs are favored by 6. And, I think this game has a lot of potential for both sides of the football to, have big fantasy games. Is this the big game that the Bengals have been looking for?
Their offense has absolutely been showing out. They've been outperforming expectations this year by a long shot, and everyone seems to be fantasy relevant. Mixon's been great since he's been back, like your apology has expressed. Tyler Boyd has had a 3rd-year breakout. It seems to be the trend with receivers. If they don't break out in 3 years, it's kind of hopeless for them. Obviously, AJ Green has done what he's had to do. Got a few touchdowns. He's been very solid. And that's the thing is, Andy Dalton hasn't lost some games. He hasn't thrown the picks and has gotten the ball to his playmakers this year. Mm-hmm. And the Chiefs defense is quite susceptible to all forms of fantasy points. So that's why there's such a high over-under. This should be a great game. You start all your Bengals if you can. And absolutely streaming. Or now he's almost not even a streamer anymore. Andy Dalton's could be an every week start as long as these matchups keep being juicy.
The Red Rocket himself. He was in very close consideration for my start of the week again, but I wanted to switch it up this week, which we're gonna talk about in a little bit.
And he keeps having good matchups. He's got Tampa Bay, New Orleans.
Oh, it's gonna be
in
nice.
The next couple weeks.
Yeah, we're saving him.
Andy Dalton.
Notable because you brought up the Joe Mixon apology. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be going out of my way to get some Joe Mixon, but I just made a trade in our gridiron tradition to acquire Joe Mixon. Tell me what you like. Tell me if you like this trade or not. I know I'm playing you this week, so it's tough to maybe give me your full thoughts. But for our listeners, do you like the trade of Jarvis Landry and Tyler Boyd for Joe Mixon? I got Ty Montgomery back, but that's just sort of more of a depth play. So do you like that trade?
I like the trade for you. I think it's lopsided because a guy like Joe Mixon is so valuable. And the fact that the guy you traded with doesn't value a workhorse running back as much and is tilting because he has a tough bye week. That's where I lean. I'm surprised that the trade went through because not that it didn't get overturned or anything, just the fact that he's willing to make that deal. We talked about, Landry hasn't been doing anything. Tyler Boyd, you're selling high because he's had a great few weeks. So you're selling the name of Landry and you're selling Tyler Boyd high because he's broken out. So those two things are, you didn't draft Tyler Boyd, you took him off waivers, and you're selling him for a guy that was taken in the top of the third round. So that still doesn't make sense to me. He should be getting at least a running back 2 back in this scenario, because he's left with Smallwood and Gurley, and Smallwood's not going to do anything for you. That's all. If that's all you have, then you're going to be screwed once Gurley goes on by 2. And now
he has Dion Lewis.
That doesn't count.
No, I know that. But so here's the situation. He has Cooper Kupp, who's out, and he has Amari Cooper, who is on bye. So he was, I saw that there was an opportunity there to trade
wide receivers are easily
two quality wide receivers. I agree. And that's what I'm saying. It was an opportunistic trade for me, and I now increase my running back core to Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, and Christian McCaffrey, which is
it's ridiculous.
Quite tasty.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, quite tasty. But the timing was really right for that trade. So it did really help both sides. But for me, it was more of a long-term gain for me. So I was really happy about that.
Don't tilt on your bye weeks. Don't make crazy moves because you have a bad bye week. PD still could lose this week, and then now what? Now you're still now you're going to be in a worse spot next week. So at least with Mixon, he had a chance to make a run because he's got a workhorse running back. He has 2 good running backs with Gurley and Mixon. And then if he got a good guy off waivers, like a flyer wide receiver that breaks out, then he's in better shape. So it just doesn't make sense to me that why that trade happened.
Yeah. In this game, I'm starting everybody except for maybe a couple guys, Sammy Watkins or CJ Uzomah. Sammy, for me, would be a flex play at best, I think. And Uzomah, if you don't have a better option at tight end, is not a bad play. I really do like him. He was my start of the week last week. Didn't flash like I thought he would, but he has been good for the Bengals. So, talk to me just really quickly about Sammy, if you would play him or not, and what the upside is for him.
Because of the implied total, I think you can play Sammy, like you said. It doesn't feel comfortable having him just because I think he only had 2 receptions last week, but you still want to chase those points. And if you have Sammy and you have him on your bench right now, and you have a guy that's playing in a low over-under game, so the lowest of the week is that Buffalo-Indianapolis game. We have, what else? We have the Dallas-Washington game. I don't think there's anyone there you would play over Sammy Watkins. That's pretty much it for those games. Jacksonville, I guess. Houston-Jacksonville is a 41-point over-under. I would play Sammy over all the wide receivers except obviously, who am I thinking of here? Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah,
sorry.
Course, yeah.
But besides that, yeah, so he's going to be a good flex play, but you might have some better options on your team with decent implied totals.
Mm-hmm. No, I think the over-under of 58 and maybe just the narrative of a back-and-forth offensive battle could really serve a guy like Sammy Watkins or Uzomah really well. But it's a tough one for sure. I think there might be better options out there, but I do like the potential of a really big offensive game for both sides.
Yep. Sounds good.
Starts of the week.
So let's move on to our starts of the week. At the quarterback position, I am going to start by saying Joe Flacco might be stream-worthy this week against the New Orleans Saints. We know the Saints' defense hasn't been great, and if this game is to be as competitive as Vegas outlines, as the Ravens being a 2.5-point favorite, I would expect that Joe Flacco would have to be out there making throws, moving the ball down the field, and getting the ball into the end zone, because I think that the New Orleans offense is a lot better than the Baltimore defense. And, if this game's going to stay competitive, it's going to have to go on the other side for Joe Flacco and the Ravens to put the ball in the end zone. So if this game's to live up to the narrative that we expect, I think that Joe Flacco could have himself a fine day. I would expect at least 250 yards and 2 scores from him.
I like that pick. I think that's a great streaming pick. And obviously Joe Flacco has been fairly solid this year, and now we finally get to see a chance in a prime game against New Orleans. So my quarterback start of the week is Matt Stafford against Miami. And it's weird. Miami it seems like they have a pretty intimidating defense, and I can't figure out why. This is basically just a confidence move. He's coming off a bye week. Start your Matt Staffords. All of their wide receivers are startable. Keep an eye out on Marvin Jones Jr. to make sure he's healthy. But Golladay and Tate are great. I think hopefully Kerryon gets some passes out of the backfield and becomes just a better Theo Riddick. It's basically just a confidence play. Again, I project him for, I think he's going to go 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. No problem against Miami. I like it. So what I'm looking for my starts of the week are closer games. All these games are pretty tight. It should be competitive. They all have fairly susceptible defenses and decently implied over-unders. And those are my big keys when I'm looking at starts of the week.
At the running back position, I am going to be starting Latavius Murray, who was dropped in a couple leagues earlier this week as waivers went through on Wednesday. So I am scooping him back up, and I'm going to play him against the New York Jets with the news that Dalvin Cook is out. So Latavius Murray should be as good as he's been in previous weeks. He had a big week last week in the absence of Dalvin Cook once again, and I think that the trend continues with Murray. So get the points out of him while you can until Dalvin Cook is back and healthy. I really, really like Latavius Murray this week. I think he has RB1 upside in a good matchup, but will be probably a fringe running back 2 on the conservative side.
I like that pick. He really showed out that he wasn't as bad as we were talking about it last week with Dalvin out. So it should be a fairly good start. Jets do have a decent defense, but he's going to get the work. And if you can get a guy like that off waiver wires, that is very nice. My start of the week is Duke Johnson. With Carlos Hyde out of the way, I think Duke comes back into that pass catching role. He's going to be on the field more often. Nick Chubb, although he's a high upside rookie, he still has his role. He's not going to be as good as conditioned to pass block in the league. Duke Johnson's been a grinder, and I think he's due for getting his work. It helps that they're playing Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay gives up tons of yards to every position. Running back, pass catching wide receiver, and tight end. It should be a good game. I think it's everyone, hopefully. So this is a really big indicator how these fantasy guys are doing on the Cleveland Browns. If they don't manage to have a decent game against Tampa Bay, then I don't know if you can ever start any more Cleveland Browns ever again. So actually, I don't really mind Baker Mayfield as a stream against Tampa just because of the bad defense.
The thing I like about Duke Johnson is his matchup is so juicy, and if you look at the Buccaneers, they've already given up 5 or more receptions in 4 games to different running backs, and so they're really, really bad against the check down, and that's where Duke Johnson excels in space, getting a little 4 or 5 pass over the middle and making something out of it. So that's a weakness for the Bucs. And I think the Cleveland Browns should exploit that with the absence of Carlos Hyde, and maybe, Chubb takes some time to get comfy in that role. So Duke Johnson should have a heightened role, I think, this week. And he was definitely in consideration for me at the running back position as a start of the week with the Carlos Hyde trade news.
Sounds good.
So, at the wide receiver position, I'm going to go with a guy that I've been high on for a couple weeks, and that's Taylor Gabriel from the Chicago Bears. Gabriel just flat out, he's been awesome the past 2 games, catching 12 balls for 214 yards and 2 scores. 12 catches on 12 targets. He's been hyper efficient, showing that he has good hands, and I think he is in store for another good outing against the Patriots. I know that Allen Robinson's there. I know that Trey Burton is there. I know that Trubisky has shown that he likes Anthony Miller and Tariq Cohen at times, but Taylor Gabriel, when you really look at it, has been the best wide receiver for the Bears in terms of efficiency and red zone use. And for that reason, I really, really like Taylor Gabriel this week. Again, I think he's a lot more accessible and playable than guys like Allen Robinson or Anthony Miller that I already mentioned. So for me, Taylor Gabriel, locked and loaded, should give you a really good week this week.
I like that play a lot. And my wide receiver start of the week is Devin Funchess. I think he should be. He's been sneakily consistent, and he's been getting 8 or 9 targets every single week and catching a decent percentage of them. Last week, he had a good game with 74 yards and a touchdown. And I think they're playing at Philadelphia. Now, I'm picking all my starts of the week on the road, and that's a little bit more risky, but I still think that it's going to be a very competitive game. I think Philadelphia is going to put up a lot of points and have to make Cam Newton throw the ball. I almost picked Cam Newton as my start of the week because I think everyone's going to have a good game against or in this matchup. It's a good rivalry game. I think even with Greg Olsen back, Funchess is still getting his looks, still getting his targets, and he's a very underrated receiver, and I think he's going to be just fine against the Philadelphia cornerbacks.
That's an interesting play. I don't know if I'm on the same page with you as that one.
He's like, for me, he seems like an Aguilar kind of guy where now but the difference is that he's the de facto wide receiver 1 in that offense. He is. Whereas now with Alshon back, Aguilar is no longer that guy. So
correct.
That's why he's still that he's a guy that no one likes to play or likes to start, but he's very startable, and I'm just giving these guys who own him the confidence to put him in that flex position because he's going to be just fine.
Okay. At the tight end position, I am going to go with a guy who is rising towards potential tight end 1 status, and that's Austin Hooper of the Atlanta Falcons. They're going up against the New York Giants on Monday night, and the matchup is juicy. The Giants have not been good, and Hooper has been every bit as involved as anybody else on that team outside of Julio Jones, but he is the red zone man and has been great for Matt Ryan as a red zone weapon. So I really, really like Austin Hooper this week to continue his trend of being a tight end 1. And, I could see him being maybe the highest scoring tight end on the week if Gronk doesn't have himself a day.
Yeah, it's quite possible. He's been getting tons of targets these past couple of weeks. And yardage. He's putting up the yards like as good as any other move tight end in the league.
Absolutely.
My tight end start of the week is a guy that people probably aren't too thrilled about starting, but yet you might have to. And this is Kyle Rudolph. It's another pretty close game. They play at the New York Jets. I hope it's going to be a higher scoring game. We've seen not great things from the Minnesota defense and not what we're used to expecting. And Kyle Rudolph is that red zone guy. He's only been getting a few targets. He hasn't really done a whole ton, but I still think he gets in the end zone this week. And I think he's a sneaky little start at the tight end position.
Interesting. I think I do like the play. I have Rudy in a lot of places. I think that Kirk Cousins just has to be better for the whole offense. He's been okay, but he hasn't been as good as I would like him to be. I mean, when you look back towards that game a couple weeks ago against the Cardinals, sorry, it wasn't a couple weeks ago, it was last week, right? He's got to be better against the Cardinals. 233 and one interception.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
I expect a lot more out of Kirk Cousins. You know, I want to see that 422 and 3 game against the Rams out of him, because the Rams have been the best defensively that they've played all year, and he showed out in that game. Highest passer rating on the year, most yards, was really good in the red zone. But then you look, Eagles, Cardinals, the 2 previous weeks weren't great. And so I expect a lot more out of Kirk Cousins with all the weapons that he has at his disposal in the passing game, and the number 1 wide receiver in the league, catching balls for him. He's got to be better, and I expect that to happen. But Kyle Rudolph, I think for me, is not on notice, but if he's to be better, I think it has to start with Kirk Cousins.
Yep,
you know?
I don't blame you there.
Yeah. But anyways, that's going to do it for us. A very busy Saturday morning, lots to talk about today. So hopefully you guys find some value in them.
You bet. Have a good weekend, Mac, and we'll talk to you again this week.
Okay, buddy. We'll see you, and hopefully you can make it a competitive match this week in the gridiron tradition.
Yeah, sure.
All right, man. See ya.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Mac_SMS and Landon_SMS. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.